everyone, back at it again with another video. Once again, I'm carrying my sled over rocks and other obstacles. So yeah, I like to keep that sled light. If I had 150 pounds of gear with me, this would be tough. So I keep it light, easy to travel, easy to pull, easy to drag. And I can get into a lot of other places that, maybe some other people wouldn't want to make the effort. I've been to this spot a few times this year. I know the ice is good. Nothing left to do but get out there, drill some holes and fish. You can see by the long shadows it's late afternoon. I've only got about 2 hours to fish before dark. But the fish cooperated pretty well, better than I expected actually. Got bright blue skies, west winds, and the wind's blowing pretty good. I know it doesn't look like it in the sheltered cove here, but it is blowing pretty good, and it's in the high 20s, so kind of chilly. Alright, I got my Milwaukee drill out, just eats through the ice. I mean, this is about 11 inches of ice, maybe a little bit more, just a few seconds per hole, and then I kick it with my right foot. Kick away the ice chips and the snow and everything, and on to the next hole. So it's literally just a few seconds per hole. That sidearm piece helps control the drill and prevent unwanted kickback. I really like that sidearm or sidebar, whatever they call it. So I'm just going to pop a bunch of holes. Generally I'm in, about 10 feet of water or so, give or take. And I'm going to start out fishing as soon as I finish drilling my holes. Alright, I'm going to start off with a clam leech flutter spoon. And it didn't take too long before I was into the fish. I've got the underwater camera in my left hand. That's great for identifying what's down there, weeds, what kind of fish species are down there, how many of them are down there. I think you learn so much more than with sonar. That's not a bad bluegill either. Nice way to start. It's good to get action right away, good to get some feedback right away. And, I wasn't sure they'd go after that bigger spoon, but, it only took a few minutes to find out the answer, and the answer was yes. On some bright days like this, bright blue skies, kind of cold wind, you need to drop down to some tungsten stuff, some light, tiny jigs, 1/32 ounce, 1/64 ounce, that kind of thing. But that was not the case today. In fact, they were a lot more fired up than I thought they'd be. Now what's that? That's a pumpkin seed. A little bit smaller than the bluegill. A little bit smaller mouth too. That one tried to come back out of the hole. Get back down there, you. So I've only been here a few minutes. I've already caught 2 fish, but my rod is already starting to ice up a little bit. I'm going to take the worm off. I'm going to try to get a little bit of the ice off the guides here. And then I'm going to switch to a reel with straight mono or straight fluoro in it. So I'm going to start off with a custom rod I built. And I built it specifically for resisting ice up. So it has one less guide, 1 or 2 less guides, depending on how you count. Oversized fly guides, oversized tip top, and then I've got 3-pound fluoro on it as a main line. So no braid, no leader, just straight 3-pound fluoro. And I found that resists icing pretty well. It doesn't resist it once you get below, 25, maybe 20 degrees. I got a 1/8 ounce Castmaster in the metallic perch color. Basically, it's just a gold Castmaster with some perch-like markings on it. So those few changes that I mentioned are going to make a huge difference in my ability to fish outside and stay mobile. Otherwise, I'd have to fish in a shack or maybe a popover, and I'm just not as mobile inside a little hut. Once you sit down and you kind of settle in, the tendency is just to stay put as long as you can keep catching fish. But without a shack, I'm much more mobile. I have a tendency to move around if the bite slows even for a little bit. And I find I do better when I'm outside than inside of a shack. Now, if it's really cold, like teens or below, you're probably better off fishing in a popover or a shack with a little heater because everything just starts icing up and, your hands get cold, blah, blah, blah. But high 20s with the sun out, and being in a sheltered cove like this, I'd rather be outside catching perch and moving around. I had a little flurry of perch come through. It must have been a school. They were all similar size range. And it wasn't a huge school, but I was happy to catch him. And one of them, I don't know if it was this one. He had some kind of mark on the side of him. Yeah, this one. And it almost looked like a big brown leech, but I think it was an injury from maybe a bird or a turtle or a big pickerel or something that was down there. And I didn't even really want to mess around with it or touch it, but he just went back down the hole. I don't know what that was. If anybody knows what that brown spot was on the perch, just comment below in the video description. Yeah, so I caught a bunch of fish, bunch of sunfish and perch, and I decided I'd upsize to a 1/4 ounce leech spoon on a rod, another custom rod I built with straight mono on it. This is Suffix Ice Magic, and it's a great monofilament. I use it as leader material all the time, but it also makes a great main line. But I only really like it paired up with a solid graphite rod. So normally with braid, I'm fishing a lot of glass rods. When I fish straight mono, I'd rather fish with a graphite rod. And I ended up jigging up a nice bass on that 1/4 ounce leech spoon. You got a little drop on the camera, and that's going to be with us for a few minutes, but eventually that drop goes away. I didn't know it was there until later on in the video. See ya, Mr. Bass. Thanks for playing. So a lot of times after a bass or pickerel comes through, they scare away the panfish, and my bite drops off dramatically. So what I'm doing is drilling a whole new series of holes, trying to get away from that bass. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera away. It's getting a little colder, and I find having my hand kind of up in the air holding the camera just makes my hand colder than if it was down by my side or in my bibs or something or in a pocket. And I don't really need it because the fish are biting really well, and if I can get away without the electronics, I'd rather just fish that way. The other thing I did was switch to a 1/5 ounce gold Swedish pimple. I'm doing a lot of spoon changes here, but basically I'm trying to get the biggest spoon that a lot of different fish will eat. So I think I saw the bass on camera, and that's why I went back and grabbed the 1/4 ounce leech flutter spoon. But that's just a little bit big for pumpkin seeds and even some of the bluegill. But the 1/5 ounce gold Swedish pimple, just a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact, falls fast. I have good feel. That seems like a better fish. What's that? Come on up here so we can have a look at you. I remember I caught a couple bass, but I also lost, I think, 2 other bass that were pulling drag, giving me a good tussle. And part of that is I'm fishing with mono. And I feel like I don't get as good hook set with the mono as I do with Fireline or some other braid. And that's just part of the game. You know, if you're going to be fishing outside and it's in the 20s, I feel like I need the mono or fluoro, but I give up a little of the hook setting power. There he is. That's another one. I guess 2-3 pounds. Let's have a better look at him. Yeah, maybe a little bigger than the last one. For whatever reason, the bass were pretty active on this day. You can see that one from its mouth. It's been caught before. Has a few old hook wounds there. But for whatever reason, the bass were pretty active on this trip. Let's see what this fish is. I mean, it was one after another for quite a while. And the bite seemed to improve as I got closer to dusk. What's that? Another perch? Yeah, not bad. Doesn't have that disgusting brown spot on his side either, so that's a bonus. Thanks for playing, bud. What's next? Sunfish. Looks like a pumpkin seed. It is a pumpkin seed. And I think from here on out, all the fish I caught were on that 1/5 ounce gold Swedish pimple. Such a classic lure. It's been around forever. Catches all kinds of fish from panfish to bass, lakers. It's good for, I mean, I'm probably in about 10 feet of water here. It's good all the way up to, you know, you could fish it 30, 40 feet easily. Falls fast. It doesn't have as much flutter as something like a Castmaster or a leech flutter spoon. But if you're in deeper water and you're trying to get down to fish fast, because they're biting well and you don't want the school to move away, it's really hard to beat, and they're available pretty much anywhere, from little mom and pop tackle shops to big box stores. You can find these gold Swedish pimples everywhere, and I always fish them with a single hook. So they come with a yellow and red little plastic flippers on them. There's another pumpkin seed, and they come with a single hook. I always take the treble off and put the single hook on. Where I'm fishing, you need to fish bait with single hooks, and I assume that applies to jigging too. So that's how I interpret the rule anyway, and I just don't want any trouble. Another pumpkin seed. So I always switch to the single hook. Plus, it's easier to bait a single hook than a treble. It's easier on the fish. It's easier for catch and release, which I'm doing a lot of. Every once in a while, I'll keep a crappie or something like that. But yeah, I like that single hook. It holds them well, hooks them well. Hooks them even better when I'm using braid to leader. I don't feel like I have quite as good a hook set if I'm fishing with straight mono. This one I tried to get a measurement of because he was a pretty big bluegill, but I noticed his tail starts to stick to the scoop, and I didn't want him to freeze to my measuring ruler on that scoop. But he was about 10 inches, and then after that, I would just kind of hover the fish above the ruler. So it's not a very accurate measurement, but it doesn't really matter. I think I held this one above the ruler on the scoop too, and that one the perch was about 11. So not giant fish at all, but decent quality. Yeah, about 11 I think. I'm having trouble remembering, and I can't see the numbers. But I don't want to keep them out of the water too long either, because they could get frostbite, and their eyes can get frozen. You want to take good care of these fish if you can. Unless you're keeping them, and then this is probably the least invasive thing you're going to do to them. Another nice bluegill. Yeah, just kind of hover above that ruler, get a rough idea of the size. It's not a bad one. I'm telling you, it was one after another for a good long while. Pumpkin seed. You never know. I could have stayed home on this trip and missed all this good fishing, but you never know until you go out there. I wasn't too sure, bright skies, blue skies. I'd rather fish with clouds, front coming in. But sometimes, heavy wind, they still eat pretty well. Also depends on the moon phase. I like fishing during moons. Oh, that was one of the bass that popped off. Yeah, see, I just don't think I stuck them really well with the straight mono. They have kind of hard mouths, especially in winter. And, that panfish rod has a fair amount of backbone, but I think the mono just has too much stretch. And if I was fishing with straight braid or, a braid to leader or fireline or whatever, I could probably stick them a lot better. But on the other hand, my reel would be solid ice and I couldn't really fish. So, gonna kind of pick your poison here. Right after I dropped that bass, I caught a pumpkin seed, I think. Yeah, another pumpkin seed, which is unusual. Usually they chase away the pumpkin seeds once, especially after they're hooked. Everything just scatters. You can see them on camera doing this. You can see them on sonar too. So I was kind of surprised to get that bonus pumpkin seed. Normally they don't stick around once the bass show up and eat. What's this coming up the hole? Looks like a bluegill. Yep. Another bluegill. Decent quality. There are redbreast sunfish in here too, and I haven't found them this year. They're kind of elusive. I catch probably 100 bluegill and pumpkin seeds to every one redbreast, but some of the redbreasts can get a lot bigger than the bluegill. And these bluegill aren't small, but the redbreasts can, easily get over 12 inches long. Another perch. He's not a bad one. Whenever I can, I'm going to stick with that larger spoon. You could catch a whole lot of fish on the smallest Swedish pimple, and that's a tactic I use all the time. It works great. But if you can, try upsizing to larger spoons, and you'll get a better quality fish, a better quality bite on average. You have better drawing power. You can pull in more fish from the holes around you. That's a little perch. That's okay. That's what they're eating down there. That's what the bigger bass and the bigger pickerel are eating down there. And I like to kind of see what the forage situation is looking like, and I try to match my lures a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly to the forage that's down there. So I'll use a perch color leech flutter spoon. I'll use the gold spoon. I'll use the metallic perch pattern Castmaster. Those are just little guys. My cat would love them, but they're not much sport. What's next? Back into the sunfish. Yeah, in certain places it seems like, or certain ponds, lakes, it seems like those little perch just carpet the bottom. I mean, even places like Winnipesaukee, where I fished a fair amount, not as much as a lot of guys that fish there every weekend. But some places are just literally carpeted with these small perch. And you could catch small perch all day long, but that's what I think a lot of the Lakers are feeding on, is young of the year perch. That's what some of the other bigger predator fish are feeding on, is small perch. In addition to smelt and maybe young of the year white perch, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I just generally like to be aware of what I think the primary forage base is. Oh, I lost my worm down there. Maybe that means it's time to go. Or maybe I could get a few more fish if I switch back to the custom rod with the little Castmaster. Yep, that's what I did. There's still a little piece of worm on this other rod I built, and it was left over and frozen in place actually, and I figured, what the heck, I'll use the rest of the worm still frozen on my hook, see if I can get a few more fish. And I ended up catching a bunch more. You know, a lot of times they like the fresh bait, fresh worms. But if they're hungry, even the frozen stuff works pretty well too. And that goes for worms, shiners, mealworms. You can see on the, well, maybe you can't see that well, but on the rod I built, there's one stripper guide, which kind of directs the line towards the running guides at the top. And there's two running guides and one tip top. So 3 guides total. And so that's just not a lot of real estate to ice up. And those guides are all oversized. They're slightly oversized. So if they do ice up, I can clear them pretty easily. That was the idea when I built this rod, and it actually worked out pretty well. Sometimes my ideas don't work out at all, but this one actually did. Hey, that's not a bad pumpkin seed. Kind of handsome fish. Sorry about dropping you. My hands probably are a little bit frozen here. Back down the hole you go. That one I had to do like a double take. Wasn't sure if I had one, and that's because it's a small perch. These little guys wouldn't leave me alone, but you know, in some states you can use them as bait, and they make actually pretty good bait. If you get them a little smaller, they make even better bait. I noticed in the winter the perch that the fish eat tend to go down in size a little bit. So in the summer you can use pretty big perch and still get bit. In the winter I would aim for like 3-4 inch perch to use as bait. But I've caught enough fish. I think I wore the worm right off the hook. Maybe wore a little paint off too. And what I'm doing here is I'm loosening up my my drag. That's kind of important, because if you don't loosen up your drag and you put them in these rod cases, the tips can break off if that handle is turning in the case, you know, just by bouncing around, jostling, etc. So you want to make sure that the drag's loose before you put it in the rod case. Some people actually, you know, they take everything apart, they cut off the lure. I don't find that to be necessary, and I've been doing this a long time. But, you know, do whatever you think makes the most sense to you. I just loosen up the drag so it's not an issue. All right, that's it. I'm all packed up, ready to go, making sure I didn't leave anything behind. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll put all the gear in the video description, rods, reels, line, lures, all that good stuff, so you can duplicate what I was doing out here today, wherever you might be ice fishing around the world or around the country. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!